All right. This week I am super excited to have my actual sister here. I'm interviewing her. Obviously, I know exactly what she does, and she's actually helped me out on many of occasions, and I'm certain I'm getting on her nerves at times. I got a couple other people now I'm calling on so I can spread the wealth out. But today I definitely want to tap into her. She's been doing phenomenal work from Tennessee all the way back up here to Ohio. She's a doctor, another friend that I know that has a doctorate. It's amazing to know that I have people that have continued to elevate themselves and grow their opportunities and also live their dream in the process. She's another person that, as the rules expect when it comes to this interview, that does not, which is the reason why we have these, as you all know. We do not do people who despise Mondays. And these are here to make sure that you do not despise the fact that Monday is on its way and that you're going to have to get back to work. And for many of us, Monday never matters because you never stopped working on Saturday and Sunday and even at midnight. So we need to make sure that we continue to expose people to opportunities that are out there that they don't necessarily think about, but know exist at the same time, or don't. But people who love their job. So I guess that's always, of course, the first question that I must ask. Do you like your job?
Yeah, that's a good question. Good intro. I appreciate that intro. I don't know if I'm supposed to do an introduction, but I'll do a little quick introduction.
You ain't got to do that. I intentionally asked this question before I say the other stuff. I want people to actually understand before they get going to knowing even what you do, that you actually like it first.
Okay, so short answer is yes, I do love my job. There are aspects of my job that, just like anybody else, just get frustrating or just are a little more challenging. But overall, yeah, I really do love what I do.
Okay. Next thing I want to ask before we get to your job is, what was the first profession that you ever thought about wanting to have?
I don't really know. So in grade school, you know how everybody does those prefab generic series of questions, and they put you in a little bubble and suggest career paths or professions that you might be good at. And one of the ones that was suggested to me from those series of questions was being an accountant. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna be an accountant just because the system said I'm gonna be an accountant. So that was my this thought that I had in my head that I was going to be an accountant, because I always knew that I liked math, I always liked science, but specifically like math. So I said, okay, so being an accountant thing might be something I could be interested in. But until I was introduced into my current career, I had this presumption that I'll be an accountant, and that's really the only thing that I thought about prior to that.
Okay, so we're getting really close to you actually finally exposing what you do. But what age were you pretty much told that this is what you should be doing?
Maybe 4th through 6th grade, perhaps around then.
So that's about 9, 10 years old.
Yeah, like 10 through 12-ish.
Okay. That's interesting. Accountant. I don't even think we even knew like that's. All right. I didn't even know.
I know I heard the term accountant prior to that, but even still now, I don't know if I firmly know what they do, but it's definitely not the kind of math that I like now know is more finance math versus solving for X. I like to solve for X. So that was just, I'm happy I didn't go down that route, because that wouldn't have been well suited for me.
Okay. So what route did you end up going down? What is your official title and what do you do?
Surprise. So I'm a physical therapist. I am the site coordinator of my specific location of my company. But for the purposes of this, I'm the physical therapist. And to rewind a little bit to your question, so when I was 16, when I was a sophomore in high school, I tore my ACL. And I had to go through rehab myself. And that's when I was introduced to physical therapy as the patient. And it was just very interesting. I said, oh, people do this. You can just help somebody get better, and you can help them return to their sport or return to whatever activity level that they want to return to. Like, this is this is pretty cool. Let me think about maybe doing this and push that accounting thing to the side.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what initially introduced me to it.
So what sport did you tear your ACL in?
So I was a gymnast. So I was a gymnast and I also ran track, but I tore my ACL doing gymnastics. So I was a level 9 gymnast at that time. So now the levels are a little bit funky, and even though I even don't know exactly how the levels trend, but when I was doing gymnastics, it was level 2 through 10 and then elite. So elite gymnasts are the ones that you see on TV doing all the fancy stuff, Simone Biles and all the big names that people would recognize. So I was level 9. So I tore my ACL during a gymnastics competition, doing a move called a full on floor. And I just landed funky and I knew something happened. I really felt like my bone was gonna be sticking out of my leg. And I fell to the ground. I was like, okay, something happened. Let me just don't look down, just don't look down, just don't look down. I finally looked down. It's like, okay, my bone's inside my leg. Okay, cool. And then everybody started rushing over and then I started crying, went to the emergency room, got the MRI, blah, 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 found out from my ACL. So then I had to, rehab from there. And I was able to return to track, but I just chose not to return to gymnastics, just for just a better opportunity and greater likelihood that I get a scholarship for track. So that is always such a weird thought or what a forward thinking thought that I had. I didn't know. I'm surprised as a 16-year-old that I was thinking that way. Okay, let me get some money for school and try to go to school for a lesser price. And let me bump this gymnastics thing so I might get injured again. So let me focus on track where I might get some money. So, but anyway, that's where I was initially introduced to PT, and that's how I injured my ACL.
Well, I mean, I think that it probably was just, I thought I heard that. But I think it probably was just the energy in the house. I mean, I think about myself. I think about how in high school I had obviously my sister Nicole. She has her master's. Got you. You were still in college, I think, at the time, and so was Kevin. But then, as time started to go by, I can't remember the time frame in which you started to work on your master's and get your doctorate. I know while I was in college, Kevin was starting to get his master's for dentistry. I think that's the proper terminology. To become a dentist, and after he ended up becoming a dentist, and so it's like I felt like I had a lot of siblings that had high bars to live up to, and it's interesting how you said it. I don't even think we've ever talked about that, but I know I fractured my spine in high school senior year, and your story is very similar because my senior year, I remember I always played power forward, expecting to grow to be 6'6" or some crap like that. Cause doctors tell people that. I don't know if they're still doing that. And in the process, after I went this senior year and I was like, all right, yeah, no one's recruiting a 5'11" power forward to a Division I school. So you never committed to truly learning how to dribble like a point guard. Let's call this a wrap and commit to football and commit to actually running track, because that's where the actual money is. So I absolutely understand the idea of, all right, yeah, got to just go ahead and commit over here to this thing that's going to actually get opportunities done.
A firm dose of reality.
Yeah. So you said the scholarship. I mentioned exactly what you did after gymnastics, just to show that you didn't just end there with the territory.
So I started gymnastics when I was 8 and tore my ACL when I was 16. So I continued gymnastics all through that time. Started running track in 7th grade, so 13-ish. I wasn't one of the summer track kids until I started running track in 7th grade. So from 7th grade all through college, that's when I ran track. And I was a hurdler, just like yourself. Shout out to the hurdlers. So yeah, it was just something that I naturally caught on to. Being a gymnast, I already had solid body awareness, and I always just appreciated form and technique. So hurdles was just a good fit for me, and then I just kind of naturally excelled at that. I was always kind of fast. I was always one of that girl in elementary school that all the boys wanted to race. Like, oh, Leslie, I can beat you. Da, 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 da. I was like, okay, well, let's race. They always did because, gender roles and testosterone, I did not. but I was always that girl. And I was, oh, let me rush you on the playground. But I never started track until 7th grade. So, just being a naturally fast sprinter with the form and technique, hurdles just ended up being a good fit for me. And then let's see, running through high school, did pretty well. I missed my entire junior year because I tore my ACL in my sophomore year. But I was able to recover fairly well. And then I got a partial scholarship to University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. So I didn't get a full ride, but UPenn is just a really good school. And that was tough to pass up on. I did get recruited by a couple other schools that did offer me full rides. And we might get to this question in retrospect, although I loved my college experience. It would have been nice to have zero debt. So just a little plug.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I would have changed my decision, but just for anybody right now in high school looking into college, if you have a full ride, go for the full ride. Come out of school debt free. I don't know what that's like, but it sounds amazing.
It's so wild how that is not a question I ever, out of all the interviews I've done thus far, I don't think I bring up the student loans that people have to deal with because of us moving ahead. And instead, everyone brings it up on their own. It's very fun and interesting that I'm noticing there's many patterns that continue to show up. So I wanted to just bring up that, and for clarity, she went to, you said University of Penn. I always mess it up because I'm thinking about Penn State, Penn Relays and everything.
Right, but, yeah, Penn Relays, not Big Ten, Penn State, University of Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Penn Relays.
Yeah. And I want to highlight that because for many track athletes, between Penn Relays and Drake Relays, that's like a very, very big deal to be able to go compete at that on that type of stage. It really means something to you. And my team never actually got to go there when I was there. I instead got to go to Drake 2 times, but that's definitely an amazing.
I remember when y'all won shuttle hurdles.
That was our women. You're talking about our women. That was the women, if I'm correct.
I think y'all won.
Oh no, you're in the years of my coach. You're not even in the years of me. That's not. I'm talking about when I was there. When I went, we won Drake Relays.
I mean, just the shuttle hurdles, not the whole thing.
No, that's what I'm saying. We won the shuttle when I was on the team. We won the shuttle hurdle relays at Drake.
Okay, yeah.
07 to 12.
Yep, got it.
And I want to say the women's team and some of our coaches actually ran at Penn. And actually, I do think we didn't have enough people on our shuttle hurdle team, but I think my freshman year when I redshirted, the team did get to go to Penn relays. As I reflect, that was the one year I think they went with the guys, and I was injured and couldn't go. But nonetheless, the point is you're not one of these people who, in your profession, is the chef doesn't eat his own cooking, and you also aren't a person who's completely ignorant and oblivious to what the actual athlete's mind state is like, what it takes to get to certain levels in competition, as well as maintaining your current state of health and strength during a pandemic and during just a regular world. So just wanted to highlight some of those things. So you want to talk a little bit about what caused you to move into this position, especially during your collegiate years?
Yeah, so you mean choosing physical therapy?
Yeah, because didn't you stopped running track a little in college, correct?
No, I didn't stop, but I did have just a lot of small injuries that made me miss parts of seasons or a full season, but I never stopped. I just had to take a hiatus to rehab several times. So I was that kid who was always injured pretty much, even through gymnastics before my main injury of tearing my ACL. I had a lot of smaller injuries that sidelined me, but they were always pretty easy to recover from. That same thing continued on to college. I just had a lot of smaller injuries that continuously gave me setbacks. So I was definitely at my peak my sophomore year in high school, the same year that I tore my ACL. So track season is spring. So I did great that spring. And then round the corner to winter, where gymnastics starts, that's where I tore my ACL. So in 2001. So that was the highlight of my career was in 2001 before I even got to college. However, I still recovered pretty well. Ended up getting the partial ride to Penn. Started running there. And because of all of my little injuries, I was just ever able to reach like my peak again. Mm-hmm. So obviously did well enough my senior year in high school to still get the scholarship, but I ended up coming in injured also. So I barely ran my freshman year. Started running a little bit towards the end, and then my sophomore year, and then just had a lot of little nitpicky injuries that I never really fully recovered from. So my college career, as far as running, was not good at all. But I'm still happy I stayed on the team, just as far as just perseverance, and I had to keep my scholarship, number two. And you just develop a lot of firm relationships. So even my closest friends now from undergrad were my teammates. So I never regretted staying on the team. It was just a part of my story that just teaches you how to recover from injuries, do the best you can, even if you're not the best person on the team, just to learn to be a part of a team and just contribute the way that you're able to contribute. So even through that, I guess that is kind of a part of the story too. I never really firmly thought about that, from going through all just the smaller rehabilitation stints from all of my little injuries, just being introduced to physical therapy even throughout that process also. So yeah, actually I never really thought about that. And then I've had a couple of just family members who have gotten ill just from different ends of the spectrum, not from the sports side, just from just deterioration of their health and wellness, and just had to learn how to walk again, or were wheelchair bound, or just had to learn how to walk with a cane, or any kind of assistive device. So at that point, I started getting introduced to just different avenues where physical therapists could work and be functional.
Yeah. No, I definitely recognize that your collegiate time period would have, as an athlete, would have been impacted by the actual training room, because I mean, I'm also a person who had, unfortunately, like I said, I redshirted my freshman year because I still was dealing with the lingering issue of an L5 lumbar fracture and hamstring issues. And I had a lot of time in the training room, and I know other teammates that had a lot of time in the training room. Mm-hmm. And that just gives you so much exposure and insight on what those people are doing, mixed with, so I don't know how it was at Penn, but I know at UC, when it came to that program, the students actually participated in our team and like being our trainers, and not necessarily our trainers, but the people that helped us and kept us together. And so sometimes you'd see athletes that wanted to be trainers, but couldn't because they were already in season. There was never a moment for them to do what their peers was doing. So I didn't know how much of that was actually playing a role in you actually learning even more. Cause like, it's almost like on the job learning through the actual experience of being the athlete dealing with it while watching you do what I want to do.
I definitely think from all of my injuries, it gives me a different perspective on this is how it feels mentally to be injured or not being able to function at the capacity that you want to function. Or these are the different things that I need to be aware of with how my body is functioning. And just, I can't do things that other athletes can do. If I am ramping up my workouts, then I have to ramp up my rehab. So just different things that I have to be aware of. There are athletes that have never, ever gotten injured. I'm like, how is this possible that you've never gotten injured? And I've had injury probably every single year that I've been an athlete. So now reflecting on that, being in the profession that I am now, saying, okay, if I would have just included these A, B, C, D things into my workout regimen, I could have either just prevented injuries, number one, or it could have added a little bit into my rehab protocol to have an even better outcome. So I think especially as a gymnast tend to get hurt a lot more than, I wouldn't say a lot of other athletes, but gymnastics puts a lot of toll on your body. And now in retrospect, it's like if I would have just included these just small pieces of maintenance and preventative care, I would have had a completely different outcome with the trajectory of my gymnastics career. So yeah, just being aware of that now with treating people now, just the mindset and how it just feels mentally to not be able to function at the capacity you want to. I think that's the best insight that I've gotten from all the injuries that I've had.
Mm-hmm. And that's the thing that's interesting, that I think that you would be able to assist a younger athlete with being prepared for stuff and not have to deal with some of the things you had to deal with because of your experiences. Like I loved being a coach when I was able to coach hurdles for a high school team. And I was able to address some of the issues that hurlers always have. I know my coach called it the Karate Kid kick when it came to jumping over the hurdle, where you just swung your leg up and went over it. Because one of the drills that we did, you jog up and you just swing the leg. And it's like, no, you need to be leading with your knee. And as you're going over, your body will naturally extend that leg. So we need to work on flexibility, but we need to address that so you don't have to worry about slowing yourself down and it's actual running motion. Because you don't jump hurdles, you hurdle hurdles.
Yeah, hurdle.
And that's the only things that people that truly understand, if you know, you know. And so, yeah, so what's the challenging part? Like, what's some of the most challenging thing about your job?
So we've talked a lot about the athletic side of physical therapy, but right now I really don't even treat a lot of athletes at all. I treat the layman, so the weekend warriors, the normal working adult that has general aches and pains, chronic low back pain, chronic neck pain, different stressors that your body is put through just from working a normal life. So I treat athletes here and there, but really my focus is on just the general population. So I think when people think about physical therapy, they always think about the athlete, which is certainly something that PTs do, but we also focus a lot on the general population, which is very, 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 very important. And I actually enjoy doing that more than treating athletes, interestingly. I just like helping people function in their everyday lives. I love athletes. I'm an athlete myself, but athletes can be a little pretentious in their rehab. And I just appreciate helping somebody just return to normal. If you can't get up from the couch, or if you can't get up from your chair, that's a problem. That really impedes on your life. Or if you can't walk to the bathroom, that's a problem. That really impedes on your life. Or if you can't lift the weight that you need to keep up with the pace at Amazon, that's a problem because you might lose your job. So I like seeing that more human side of the rehab process and just helping people return to normal. So as far as the challenges for me in my particular setting, I work in a really, really, really unique setting. We have a lot of non-English speaking patients. There's a really big Somali community in Columbus and a really big Nepali community in Columbus as well. So my challenges in my particular setting are quite unique. So for me, it's the language barriers that are the most challenging. And we have translators, but it's just really different when you can't speak directly to your patient and they respond directly to you. It always has to filter through a translator first. And I'm happy that we have translators to make sure that there's nothing lost literally in translation. But it does present challenges when you can't speak directly to your patient. There's just a different level of confidentiality when somebody's speaking directly to you that might not be there if somebody else is there present doing the translation. So I would really truly say that's the biggest challenge for me in this particular setting. But I'll say just reflecting back on more typical settings when you don't have a language barrier, I would say the toughest thing is like checking your own emotions at the door. So anytime you're interacting with the patient, that session is about them. It is firmly about them. But you might be bringing in frustrations from a conversation that you just had with another patient, or you might be bringing in frustrations that you have with not meeting your quota from the previous week. So for myself as a site coordinator, those are just other administrative things that I have to think about as well as treating full time. So just making sure that anytime I'm entering the room with another patient, that I've cleared out all that other stuff that might muddy my mind so I can really give my full attention to that particular patient. So yeah, I would say that's probably the most challenging thing. And I see a new patient every 45 minutes to 1 hour. So it's like every hour you have to like clear your mind, clear your mind, clear your mind, clear your mind. And that is just challenging to do. It's just a normal human being myself. But it's very important if the intention is to provide quality care. You really have to check your biases, check your mindset, just to make sure that when you're entering that room, that the patient really feels like they have your full attention.
All right, so just for people to know as we grow as humans, since you brought it up, what would you say is the number one problem that the layman, as you said, has, and what could we be doing to avoid having to, I guess, be seen by you in the future? I think I once heard somebody say, many people think that the best doctor has a crap ton of people in their office, in their lobby, but the best doctors have no one actually coming to see them because they're all healthy. So what do you do? What would actually help the public if we all were to address maybe a particular behavior, and what's the common issue?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the most common body ailment, if you want to say it that way, is low back pain for sure. So the stats are that 80% of the population will have had at least one episode of low back pain throughout their personal lifespan. So that's by far the most common. And the thing that people can do and just generally be aware of is move, especially for people who have sedentary jobs. If you're sitting at your computer for 8 hours straight and never getting up, or getting up one time a day just to go to lunch, or another time to go to the bathroom, so you've gotten up literally 2 times in 8 hours, that's a problem. Your body is not having enough variance of movement to get proper blood flow to your muscles, to get good lubrication to your joints, and your body just gets stiff in those positions. And if you're sitting like that for 40 hours a week, you're going to end up having some low back pain. Or the other side of the spectrum, those who do move a lot. So I talked about Amazon distributors. You're doing a lot of lifting and twisting, the same way for 8 hours straight. So although you're moving, there's not a lot of variation in your movement. You're never twisting to the left, you're never bending down, you're never lifting up, you're only doing this lateral movement for 8 hours of your day. So bodies just need to, we have this little adage in the PT space that says movement is medicine, and that's really, really true. If you give your body the right thing, it can really heal itself. But again, there's nothing wrong with physical therapy, just like mental health. There's nothing wrong with seeking a mental health professional. You just need to be aware of when your body is having a problem to seek a professional at the first onset and don't delay getting treatment. The other thing is just being aware of your nutrition. What are you feeding your body? So your body will function based on the things that you put in it. So if you're eating the right things, your body, you're setting your body up for a better environment to heal and just thrive and do well. So just watching your nutrition. So, minimizing sugar intake, minimizing dairy if you can. You don't have to be a vegan necessarily, but paring down the meat a little bit. I think the easiest thing for most people is just slowly starting to nick down on the pop soda from wherever else you're from if you're watching this.
It's pop. We from Cleveland.
Pop. And just watching the sweet. So just be aware of what you put in your body. That's your fuel.
Okay. I guess, so you mentioned the lower back. As a person who obviously moved around a lot and still does. I don't run a whole lot, and you know why. But when it comes to the movement, even talking about the moving the boxes, if you work at an Amazon, my personal experience, and that's where my question comes in. How much is it? Because I know it's not just moving. How much is it the fact that a lot of us don't commit to our core? I remember when I went to college, I'm shredded with abs, and then I have the physical therapist, our PT. She walks up to me and is like, "Hold on, stand there. Let me see something. Do this exercise. Oh, your core is crap." And she just slaps me right there. She's an old school lady, older lady, so she didn't really care about nobody feelings. And I'm looking down like, I'm shredded. What do you think core? And I'm like, yeah, your core is under what you talking about. And so you missing out on it. So how much is core strength potentially playing a factor in there? Because, we get set, like you said, sedentary. Our stomachs start to protrude a little bit further, and we just start to extend and balance the muscles. The balance of the muscles go all off, and then it sets us up for an opportunity for an injury. How much is that part of it?
There are two different types of muscles. So there are what we classify as tonic muscles, and another designation as phasic muscles. So phasic muscles are like the big bulky muscles, your biceps, your quad, your glutes, your rectus abdominis, which is the most superficial ab, like that's a six-pack ab that you can see superficially. Those muscles fatigue very quickly. Deep to those are what we call our tonic muscles. So tonic muscles have more endurance. They connect directly to the bone. Those are the muscles that need to be strongest and have the most endurance to allow people to just complete their natural daily tasks without feeling as much discomfort. So if we're talking about core, your core is actually a group of 4 muscles. So it's your transverse abdominis, which is the deepest layer of abdominal muscles. It's your multifidi, which is a series of muscles that are on your spine. So we got your transverse abdominis in the front, we got your multifidi in the back. It's actually your pelvic floor muscles underneath. So now we got front, we got the back, we got the bottom, your pelvic floor muscles, and it's actually your diaphragm up top. So if we're generally talking about core, you have to think about those 4 groups of muscles, and generally your tonic muscles. So your tonic muscles have the most endurance, they fatigue less quickly, but they're the ones that atrophy the soonest when you have pain. To work those particular muscles, a lot of people do, your basic bicep curls, your knee extensions, your leg press in the gym. And even the same thing, if you have guided workouts, you usually focus on and work your larger muscles, your phasic muscles. But unless somebody has specifically trained you to address your tonic muscles, you really don't even know they exist. So the type of exercises that you have to do to address those muscles are just different. So, I'm not going to show those right now necessarily, but if somebody's going through a rehabilitation process, those are the ones that we focus on. So relatively lower weight, higher repetitions to focus on those exercises. Generally, people working on diaphragmatic breathing. So a lot of people are upper chest breathers and don't really feel their abdominal muscles, and their lower abs really extend. When you feel your belly extend, that means you're a good diaphragmatic breather. And a lot of people don't even know about the pelvic floor. That's just a completely new word when people hear that. For men, not as important, but for ladies, pelvic floor is absolutely important. So those are the 4 muscles that we're thinking generally about the core. That's the core, those 4 muscles.
Okay. So you're saying a whole lot of words that I'm certain you actually say while you're training people, because y'all do that all the time. When y'all get so smart like that, y'all explain the actual muscle and all the details of what's going on with this AC joint, having never heard of this term AC joint in my entire life until I had shoulder pain. You all start saying like,
break it down for everybody.
Yeah, so you all didn't do that, but that means you acquired a whole lot of information in order to get to the place where you are to feel qualified, not just feel, but be qualified. So what does it look like as a person that's going into your profession? What qualifies one to become a PT?
Mm-hmm. So before physical therapy school, you have to have your bachelor's. So however long it takes you to get your bachelor's, you just have to have your bachelor's. The traditional track is to finish it in 4 years, but everybody's path is completely different. But you just have to have, what's that?
Which degree? Which bachelor's degree?
It doesn't matter. So you have to have specific prerequisites to get into physical therapy school. But I had my Bachelor of Arts. So I have a social science degree for undergrad. My major was public health. I would say that's kind of non-traditional. Most people entering physical therapy school either have been pre-physical therapy majors. A lot of universities have that very specific designation for a major, or any kind of science. So most people have their BS, their Bachelor of Science, but you don't have to. Like I had my BA, but I still took a whole bunch of science courses. So to get into PT school, every physical therapy school is a little bit different as far as their specific requirements, but most of them require you to have taken at least 2 semesters of biology, at least 2 semesters of chemistry, at least 2 semesters of physics, at least 2 semesters of anatomy and physiology, at least 1 psychology, at least 1 math course, and just some schools have a few spattering of others. So as long as you get those prereqs and have taken your GRE, then you are set to apply to PT school. So although I have a Bachelor of Arts, I still took all of those classes at the same time. So I was fine to go ahead and apply to school. I would also say that my trajectory was a little bit different. I didn't go directly from undergrad to PT school. Most people do that. So I got my bachelor's. I took 2 years off, so I worked as a physical therapist aide first, and I did have to do 1 post-bac year to finish a few of my prerequisites and take the GRE. And then I was ready to apply for PT school. So once you apply and get accepted, then physical therapy school is an additional 3 years. So you get your bachelor's, the 4 years, or however long it takes you to get your bachelor's. And then physical therapy school is additional 3 years. So once you graduate from PT school, you graduate with your DPT, which is your doctorate in physical therapy. All of PT schools now are at the doctorate level. Years ago, it was a master's program. At first, it was just undergrad degree. So you have your Bachelor of Science, you majored in physical therapy, and then you're a physical therapist. Then it started becoming a master's level degree of 2 years. Around 2009, I believe, most schools were like solidly transitioning to the doctorate. So now it's a 3-year program. And the difference is that we get more pharmacology, more understanding of medicine. Although we can't prescribe medicine, we do have to have an understanding of how medications interact. And if the patient is coming in with this laundry list of medications that most of them do, that we have a general understanding of why it is that they're taking them, how that can affect their care. And just more of an understanding of how to read medical terminology as far as imaging. So x-rays, MRIs, CT scans, we have to be able to understand all that verbiage that they write out. So those are the 2 big differences into why it's become a doctorate level program. And there's some other things too, but those are the 2 big differences.
Okay, so I guess taking a step back and hearing you, is there a reason that you did not get your degree in the traditional college degree? Was there something you went to college thinking you were going to do instead of physical therapy?
No, not necessarily. I always had this physical therapy being in my mind. I was pretty certain that that's what I wanted to do. I really don't know when this switch happened, but I at some point became interested in public health. I don't firmly know when that happened. If I took a class first and I became interested, or something else in my personal life made me become interested. But at some point, I started thinking more globally necessarily, or what are the other contributing factors to health and wellness? So it's not just your own physical presentation, it's population health. What kind of access do you have to grocery stores? How prevalent is the diabetic population? Why is it that Black people always have high blood pressure? So those different types of things that I became more aware of and more curious about and wanting to have a role in potentially decreasing that prevalence started sparking my interest in population health, which is public health. Now I don't do anything firmly in that route, but I would say that thought and some other thoughts as well are the reasons why I work in the setting that I work now. And I think that interest in public health is one of the reasons why I like treating the layman versus athletes. When you treat the layman, you can sneak in other conversations about, what are the things that in your own life that are, contributing to your high blood pressure? What's your diet like? What's your nutrition like? Are you getting enough water? Although that's not what I do directly, with having the opportunity to spend more time with patients with a 45-minute to 1 hour session, you can chit chat about a lot of things that contribute to health and wellness. And nutrition is a big part of health and wellness, and comorbidities are a huge part of health and wellness. So if we can get people to a point where they are fueling their body with the right things, all of these things are preventable illnesses. Having diabetes is a preventable illness. Having high blood pressure, for the most part, is a preventable illness. There are other nuances about both of those things, especially with diabetes, depending on what type of diabetes you have. But yeah, I became very interested in population health and what are the other things that are contributing to poor health and wellness and poor health outcomes versus just on an individual level.
Okay. So you said several things, and I want to run back to one thing, though, and then I'm going to go to something that's going to be a small tangent that I think is necessary to be discussed. The first thing is, just for clarity, it sounds like you can get your degree. The average amount of time is maybe 7 years from bachelor's to doctorate, and completion is about 7 years.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So if you're going an absolute traditional route, I'll give you kind of the traditional route. You graduate from high school, you go to college, you finish your bachelor's in 4 years. You typically have a science major. You graduate with your Bachelor of Science. During your senior year in college, you have already started applying to physical therapy school. You're taking your GRE. You graduate from undergrad. You immediately start in physical therapy school, and then you finish your 3 years right away. So that's the very, very traditional route that you would hear most people discuss. Okay.
So I don't know the proper terminology. I know some people have internships, some people have co-ops. I know you mentioned that you took some time off and you worked for a physical therapy, worked in physical therapy. You weren't a physical therapist, but you were working in there. Is that a requirement? Like, is that a part of school? Did you actually get some type of internship, co-op, or hands-on practice?
So yes and no. So this good question, because I didn't leave this out. So to be able to apply to physical therapy school, you have to have a certain amount of observation hours. So that's along with your prerequisites, along with taking the GRE, you do have to have a certain amount of observation hours. Every school is a little bit different, and I don't at all remember what those numbers are at all. So yes, I did have to have that. However, I actually worked as a physical therapist for 2 full years before I went to physical therapy school. So working there alone, I was able to get my observation hours and be a paid employee as well. So that ended up intertwining very, very well for me, and it definitely worked out in my favor. So I had an opportunity to work in a physical therapy clinic and be in the midst of the profession that I wanted to go into while getting my requirements for school. So even if you don't work as a PTA aide, most people do not, but you do have to have observation hours. So if we're going back to that standard trajectory that I talked about during your senior year in high school, or maybe starting your junior year, you have already started just generally calling physical therapy clinics and saying, hey, do you accept students? Can I observe there? And some say yes, some say no, but you have to find a way to get your observation hours. So that's before you get to physical therapy school. Once you're in PT school, we have to do clinical rotations. And that's a part of the program once you're in there. But to be able to apply to PT school, you have to have just general observation hours.
Okay. Okay. Now, the subtle tangent, because I have a question. And I like to ask at times about myths, but since you said it, I'm curious to know your perspective. And I'll also share why I asked. So, how much of the research that you did answers the question about certain diseases running in families? Because I once heard someone say, and I truly probably agree more with it, when it comes to, like they say, diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. These are some of the key things that are very common that run in Black families. And what was said that really clicked with me, and outside of type 1, where you just born with it, diabetes, there seems to be more of the disease doesn't run in a family. The habits that are the blueprint to acquire the disease run in the family. So if you're not like consuming a crap ton of sugar, I mean, yes, you're going to be potentially more susceptible to it. I absolutely agree with that. But I think if you know in advance that your family is susceptible to it, it's highly preventable if you don't follow the same blueprint that led grandma, mom, uncle, pops to actually have this disease that runs in Black families. And it's like, stop eating all that pork every day. What are we doing here? Like, you drink only pop. Do you ever drink water? It's only half a gallon of freaking what was I drinking back in the day? That would have been not lemonade, but yeah, lemonade. Kool-Aid, there it is.
A full 2 cups of sugar.
Just
so much sugar.
So how much do you agree with that? And and correct me if I'm wrong, or check me for that perspective. I don't mind, but that's mine.
There are definite genetic components for sure to especially high blood pressure and any cardiac history. There are genetic components for sure. However, to your point, a lot of the reasons why it becomes so rampant is because you eat how your mom ate. She ate how your grandma ate. She ate how her mom ate, and behaviors are passed down as well. And behaviors start from a very, very, very young age. So if the behaviors are not changed with nutrition, just general lifestyle, of course you're going to get the same thing that your family has gotten because you're engaging in the same behaviors and nutritional patterns that your family has engaged in. So at some point in time, families have to have just enough knowledge to break the cycle, because a lot of people don't even know that connection, which is why public health and population health and education are so important. A lot of people don't even understand or are knowledgeable about the connection between nutrition and behaviors and how that affects your health and wellness. So while there are definite genetic components, there are behavior components that definitely shine a little bit more loudly and making so that each generation is struggling with the same issues. So it is both. However, if you have a familial history of diabetes, if you have a familial history of cardiac problems, and you have gotten enough education and have enough wherewithal, meaning finances, access, all those other things that can prevent from somebody from eating healthy, because there's all these other issues that prevent people from doing that, then you can definitely break that cycle.
Yeah. So you would agree that if I was a vegetarian and minimize or ate reasonable amounts of carbs, that it's highly unlikely I'm going to get heart disease / high blood pressure.
You are less likely. You're definitely less likely. So we can't say that it is absolutely 100% preventable, but for sure you're on the way low end of the spectrum in your likelihood of acquiring that problem.
Yeah, I understand. You're more professional than I am because it's not my profession that I have to cover my tail by saying what I'm saying. So I'm gonna say, yeah, if you following a proper blueprint on eating, it's highly unlikely. She can't say that, but I can.
Yeah, and I would say for me, and the reason why I say that is that I kind of fall in that bracket. My mom's side of the family has a very rich history of cardiac problems and high blood pressure and high cholesterol. I'm borderline high cholesterol myself, even as somebody who is very active, really pays attention to what I'm putting into my body. And because of my familial history, I'm still teetering a little bit. So, you can definitely be aware of these things, but your familial history is something to be very aware of and how that might affect your own health and wellness. So with me knowing that and being able to get the foods that I need to, I can do that to make sure that I don't get high blood pressure. Same thing for my mom. She's pretty active and eats well, and she still has high blood pressure. So the familial history definitely cannot be ignored. But if you know you have that familial history, it definitely be focused on what you put into your body.
Yeah.
Again, it's the means and all those different things that continue to not be able to do.
Yeah, I was definitely continuously told that over and over, like be careful, keep an eye out, cholesterol and things like that. And I think you know this, but like 2 years ago, that's when I was hit with yeah, you have elevated cholesterol levels. And I seen the numbers; they were high. They weren't elevated. They were high cholesterol levels. And I came back, and this was a nurse practitioner who told me this. I came back. The doctor, thank God, I'm skipping over some stuff and I'm gonna go back to it. The doctor was like, yeah, you're the one that had really high cholesterol last time he was here. I was like, no, she said elevated. He's like, no, that wasn't, you had high cholesterol. And I'm like, yeah, but I've been doing stuff. He was like, yeah, uh-huh. Well, we're gonna do another test on you again. And if you don't get these things together, then we're gonna put you on medicine. But there's other options, right? Yeah, we're probably gonna put you on medicines. Now, what he didn't know that he found out was, I believe, and I have to go back and look at my numbers. I believe I dropped it about 50 to 70 points. I mean, I was high. And it was because she told me that she scared the crap out of me. And I was like, nah, I'm not, I'm like, that's why now, oh God, January is coming. January is hell month for me. Cause I cut everything out. Like I go very, very hard in January. I drink primarily only water and black coffee, maybe green tea. I go primarily vegetarian, vegan if possible, no meat. So I cut all those things out. I try to stay as close to organic and reasonably priced as possible. I cut all sugars out. Well, that's misleading. I cut majority of sugars out except fruits and yellow raisins that I put in my oatmeal. And I eat oatmeal probably 90% of the time without anything a year with my apples. And when he took me and he did the test, he was like, all right, I guess it's going down. I was like, all right, well, give me another month. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna give you another month. And by the time I came back to him, and boom, it had went under. And he was like, all right, so now we don't talk about statins and all these things. I'm like, yeah, I know, because I'm not responsible enough to be having to take a pill every single day of my life outside of wanting to, like fish oil. Being required to is so different, and I don't want
And that's oh man, don't get me on this soapbox. Just about the American healthcare system is just so problematic. It's so just pharmaceutically driven. So instead of really stressing to a person and guiding them through saying, this is how you can change your behaviors so that you can lower your cholesterol and so that you can manage your high blood pressure, let me just give you this pill. And then that'll solve the problem. It'll manage the problem for sure. And there are people that need medication, definitely not against medication if it's necessary, especially if your blood pressure is sky high. You need something immediate to bring that high blood pressure down so you don't have a stroke, so you don't have other issues. But as far as long-term success, the goal is not to keep people on medication for forever. If there are other things that you can do to minimize your risk, then definitely focus on those. But it's really challenging because that's just the American healthcare system. It's just so pharmaceutically driven. and there are fast food restaurants every mile, especially in lower socioeconomic areas. There's a fast food spot every 10 feet. So that's just a big problem just about American society and American healthcare system in general. So I do see a wave of that changing. I hear people recognizing that nutrition is important and even starting that conversation themselves. So that's definitely a step in the right direction, but it's still not firmly over there as much as a lot of people would like it to be, as far as not being so pharmaceutically driven.
Yeah, the being responsible part is what people we want easy way outs. I hear Jordans are now officially coming out with some. I don't even wear J's while I'm saying it like this. I think I just heard somebody talk about it. They're like, there's a bunch of J's coming out now that will lace themselves up, like the Back to the Future things. Like we that lazy, like we got to figure out a way out of everything. And disclosure, obviously, I'm not the professional, so that's not the disclosure, but I will say that I also in January overdosed on like the amount of working out, and I've recently really add like 16 to 24-hour day fast. Frequently, I do a lot of intermittent fasting, so it ain't just eating; it's a whole lot of stuff in there. So somebody heard me and like, "Oh, that's how I can do it." Don't come to Mario and say Mario told you to do these things. I said, your body is your body. You learn what you got to learn. But okay, so how often? Ooh, that's a question. That is a question because I always stress this to people. How big of a problem, because you mentioned how their diets are impacting their actual injuries and the ways they're moving their bodies are causing injuries. How much would you say the fact that we're so ignorant about our bodies is playing a major role in the fact that we don't learn enough about what's causing our injuries? And the way I usually word it is, it's interesting that people know what type of gas to put in their car. They know that their car can handle regular, or their car needs premium. And if you don't gamble with a car that needs premium, you put that in there, you do not put regular gas in there. And when you know that, it's like, why don't you know what you fuel your body with and what your body is best fueled off of, opposed to just throwing stuff in it and believing it? So how much do you think that the educational system or just the awareness of our own bodies is playing a factor in people living healthy lives?
Yeah, I think there is a huge lack of information and a huge lack of awareness. Because focusing on educating people on personal management doesn't make money. And, I hate saying it that way. Commercials about McDonald's make money, and commercials about Lipitor make money. But information and advertisements about these are the things that you can put into your body don't make as much money. And it becomes kind of incumbent and contingent on families to begin to educate themselves, especially with the technological era right now. There's really no piece of information that you can't find. You just have to know where to start. But I think the lack of information just on typical advertisement platforms is just missing because there's not a lot of money in that. Now, I still am happy to know that things are changing because, gyms are kind of generally advertised. And right now there's a slew of documentaries related to health and wellness, and specifically like plant-based diets and more alkaline diets. But again, those things don't make a ton of money. So I think that's where just the American system again, and the American healthcare system doesn't focus on that as much because it's not the money maker. The pharmaceutical industry is the money maker, which is not what's beneficial for people's health and wellness. So that, that's just a very unfortunate part. But, as people learn more, then the next generation will learn more. So, that's definitely the positive side about it.
Yeah. So since you mentioned the money part, I think most times I interview people, it's kind of obvious how they get paid. It's just hourly or whatnot. I know you have actual people that come to you, have clients and whatnot. So when it comes to you being paid, how much of that is hourly? Is it all hourly, or is it based off of how many clients you actually have? Like, yeah.
So every physical therapy clinic is pretty different. So I am paid on salary. There are physical therapists, depending on what company you work for, who are paid on salary. So whether I work 35 hours a week or 45 hours a week, I still make the same because I'm on salary. There are a lot of physical therapists who are paid hourly. So if you work 35 hours, you get paid for 35 hours. You get 45 hours, you get paid for 45 hours. There are some companies that offer incentives. So if you see like 17 patients a day versus 10 patients a day, you get a little incentive for seeing a few more patients. Most larger physical therapy companies, definitely hospital-based systems, and kind of traditional outpatient physical therapy clinics get their reimbursement from insurance companies. So a patient comes to us and they have medical mutual insurance, or they have Care Source, or they have Medicare. Medicare gives us a certain amount for that particular patient that we saw. There are a few other nuances in that, but we get paid through insurance. There's a wave now with PT clinics that are just strictly cash-based. So they do not go through insurance at all. A patient will come to them and there's just one flat rate. They don't go through insurance at all. The patient just pays the physical therapist or that physical therapy company directly out of pocket, no insurance, and that's how they make their money. So as far as the employees getting paid, the physical therapists getting paid themselves, they're typically either on salary or hourly, and can sometimes have incentives if they see a little bit more. And then as far as how the company makes money for seeing patients, we can either go through insurance, or you can choose to be completely cash-based and not go through insurance at all.
Okay. So you mentioned you get paid regardless if you're working 60 hours or if you're working 5 hours a week, the same, because you're on salary. With that being said, not talking the salary part, but what is a PT doing when they are not seeing a patient?
So this is a really interesting question, because even when I think about like how my job should just be super duper easy, and I love my job, but there are just little nuances on the inside that you don't know happen. So documentation is one thing, is one big thing. For every single patient that we see, for every single encounter, we have to type a note. So what the patient told us, what we focused on during that session, our summary statement about how they responded to that treatment, and then our plan for the next time that they come in. So every single time a patient comes in, we have to type that for every single patient that comes in. So if we see 15 patients, we are typing 15 notes for that particular day. Some days you can keep up with your notes in real time. So during the 45 minutes to the hour that you're seeing the patient, you can sometimes get your documentation done during that hour. Sometimes you get a little backlog. So when a patient is not there, you're catching up on notes. The other thing that happens, patients will call in and they have a question, or another medical clinic will call in and they have a question about how this patient's rehab is going. So you're calling patients back, or you're calling other medical providers back about their care. Sometimes a patient needs an assistive device. They need a ventilator, they need a walker. So we have to talk to their insurance company about getting them that rollator or that walker. Other things, example, I have a workers' compensation patient right now who is now going through kind of a legal battle to get more visits approved. So she called me and said, hey, Leslie, can you write a letter for me? Just generally saying how the rehab went. So patients just ask for different things. So I typed that letter out for her. So working on things that will help a patient get more therapy sessions. What else do we do for me? And since I'm the site coordinator, I have more administrative duties. So this is not necessarily the traditional route for a physical therapist, but for me, I have to think about the schedule around holiday times. So we're going to be closed during certain days of the holiday weeks. How are we going to manage our schedule so that we can still see the amount of patients that we need to stay financially solvent as the business for that particular week. One of my employees says that they're taking off a day. What kind of coverage do I need to find to make sure that we have a full staff during that particular week? We have to market. We have to figure out how to bring new clientele in. So it's not always the easiest thing for my particular setup. We are located inside of a physician's office. And I really, really like our setting because we're not physician owned. We are our own space, our own companies, but we just rent space from the physician and the nurse practitioner. So they do send us quite a few patients, but sometimes they forget to send patients and you have to strategically remind them to start sending patients again. And we have to start developing new avenues to get clientele and patients coming in. So just brainstorming different marketing strategies to get new patients coming in. Those are the main things I can think of off the top of my head.
That's all. That was a lot. You just.
I would say like traditionally it's catching up on notes, returning phone calls. Those are the two main things that will end up happening.
Okay.
And then there's other things too.
Okay. Now getting more physical, technical about the actual people's health and recovery. I don't think I've ever actually thought about how much do you need to know? Like what's the extent of what you can help a person recover from? It's like, because I couldn't compete before. You talking about lower back people. I'm sure if somebody came to you for the shoulder, you could talk to them about that, or something going on with the neck, you can help with that. It's like the whole body. So what are we doing? Like how much do you know, and what can't you help with?
So physical therapists are movement specialists and primarily musculoskeletal system specialists. So I'll say musculoskeletal, neuromuscular, and cardiovascular if you work in that type of setting. So I think this is where there becomes a lot of confusion with what physical therapists do, because we do a lot of things just depending on what setting you're working in. So if you work in a traditional outpatient physical therapy clinic, meaning the patients come to us from off the street, we mainly work on bones, joints, and muscles, primarily. So we have to have a full awareness of the skeletal system, of the muscular system, and then of the nervous system also. So we have to be aware of if a patient presents with a foot drop, meaning when they walk, they can't pick their foot up. What are some of the reasons that their foot might be dropping? Is it because they have weakness in their muscle? Is it because the joint doesn't have good integrity in their ligamentous structures? Or are their nerves not properly communicating to the muscles to tell them to pick their foot up? Or is there something going on in the low back that is causing pressure on the nerves so that now the nerves can't signals all the way down to the foot to bring the foot up? So generally speaking, we treat all the way from the jaw and headaches to the big toe. So we have to know how to treat the entire body. We have to know the bony system, all the joints, all the ligaments, all the tendons, all the nerve innervations of the entire body, pretty much. If you work in cardiac rehab, which that's just a completely different avenue of therapy, then you have to have more knowledge of the cardiovascular system. Everybody's a generalist when they come out of school, but cardiac rehab specialists really focus on that. There are lymphatic physical therapists. So for an example, if a lady has had mastectomy, so their breasts removed, there are lymph nodes that sit underneath the armpit. And a lot of times those lymph nodes are affected and ladies get a lot of swelling in their upper extremity. So lymphatic therapists focus on different kind of like wrapping techniques and massage techniques to do lymphatic drainage. That's another area of specialty for physical therapists. There are pelvic health specialists that are very, very focused on the pelvic floor and treating people who have incontinence issues. So have trouble going to the restroom and have trouble holding so they don't wet themselves generally. So there are physical therapists that specialize in pelvic health also. So all of us have a general knowledge of all of those things, but depending on what area you're specializing in, then you get even more knowledge of it.
Wow, if I'm honest, I'd never even thought about, the lymph nodes. I've never thought about any of these things. That's why it hit me. I was like, what's your capacity? Where are you stopping at and what you actually know? So that's interesting. Okay.
So I'm a musculoskeletal specialist. So bones, joints, muscles, nervous system. So if I had to, I could do some lymph drainage, but probably go see somebody else. If I had to, I could do cardiac rehab, but I gotta really brush up on that. But the musculoskeletal system, that's my bread and butter. That's what I know for sure.
Gotcha. Okay. So ballpark, what's the starting salary from, I guess you've done multiple positions already. You had an entry and then you're at the position you are now. So for entry level PT, what's the salary range for that?
For entry level, when I first started, so I gotta rewind, this is in 2012 when I first started. So, inflation is what it is. So I started as just a salaried physical therapist only at 68,000, I believe, or no, 61. 61,000 was my starting salary, and that was pretty consistent with just an entry level position. I'm really not sure what it is now, honestly. Well, actually, I can say. So for a first year of PT, probably about 35 to 38 per hour. Now I have to do a little bit of math to say what that is per year. I think that's around 68. So that's like an entry level position in Tennessee or Ohio. So depending on if you live in California or Texas or New York, obviously it's going to be a little bit different.
Okay. Now, of course, I don't want to know your salary. So you gave us an entry level. First off, is there a cap for what an actual PT can make? And what's the general cap for what a PT makes?
Yeah, you sent me some questions ahead of time. Probably should have done a little more research on that. But I would say I don't know if there's a cap, because every year to keep up with general market inflation, you're generally getting about 2 to 3% raise each year. But for staff PT, you're not a site coordinator, you're not a clinic director. Usually around 80 or 85 is probably about the range that you're going to be at towards, as you keep progressing in your career. It's definitely different if you are a clinic director or have any kind of administrative duties, because you're doing more, so your salary is going to be different in that way.
Okay, so of course I did some quick googling, so it looks like they're saying it's like between 74 and 100. That sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's really good, because it's like I did 5 years in college. 2 more years I could have been a PT had I committed to learning the information you did and doing what you did. But as we discussed already, it's about allowing people to know that they can do these other jobs that are out there. But it's also important to make sure people know that about jobs that allow them to live lives that they actually can enjoy, allows them to live lives that allow them to eat the actual food they want to eat. Now, we're not including debt and things into this conversation. We're talking about just flat out salary. If you don't have any debt and maybe you're single, these are potentially positions that allow you to live a life that is very enjoyable. Probably can travel wherever you want. I mean, you've traveled. I've seen some of your images. What countries have you been to?
I've been outside of the States. I've been to not a whole bunch. I've been to London and I've been to Portugal.
Okay. But I mean, there's people here in the city that are, I know some guys who are professional, but don't know anything about. I talked to somebody, you're like, yeah, you go to Columbus all the time. When I was in business development, and I was like, yeah, it's like, I'm like, why are you saying like that, man? That's a lot. I'm like, I guess. What do you mean? He's like, that's 4 hours, right? I'm like, bro, you could start a movie when I leave. And I might get there before you finish the movie. Like, what? No, it's like, really, like, where have you been? I've only been really to like Covington, and he hadn't even. So Mason in Ohio, in Cincinnati, is like maybe 20 minutes away from his home, and he thought that was about an hour. I'm like, oh boy. So it matters to be able to say that you actually travel, regardless to a couple.
Yeah, I agree.
It gives you exposure to different cultures. College does the same thing, but to be immersed is a whole different beast and an amazing opportunity that finances allots people. And it just allows people to recognize, as always, I'm going to call people out. It's not about becoming rich, because rich is not a number. It's about getting a salary and knowing what you actually desire. And what I found talking to real people outside of those lofty goals, if I want to own a Lambo, most people, they can't come up with more than like $70,000 worth of expenses a month. We're not talking about saving and investments, but I'm just saying that it seems like that's around the average salary that people probably would have some peace. And I think statistically they say happiness is at 75, satisfaction is about 90,000 in the United States. They did a happiness study to see what salaries bring that. Which was interesting. So I know we're finishing up. So what's the trajectory for a person in your position? You started off at what role? What was the title, and what's the titles that you've had as you moved up the rank, and what can you become in this industry?
So I started off as just a physical therapist, which means just a staff physical therapist. You don't have any other responsibilities except for treating your patients who are on your schedule. You come in, you treat your patients, you do your notes, you make your phone calls, and you go home pretty much. My next step was becoming a lead physical therapist, and these titles were specific to that company that I worked for at the time. So lead physical therapist is kind of a step up, not quite a site coordinator, because you don't have to deal with any staffing changes necessarily or finances pertaining to the clinic, but you are responsible for just making sure that you have a generally cohesive team, and that if there are any immediate concerns or any immediate problems that another staff therapist is having, meaning if that staff therapist goes in with a patient and they start the evaluation and they're like, oh, shoot, I've never seen this before, I don't know what I'm doing. They can come out of the room and ask you real quick about, okay, A, B, and C, okay, what do I do next? And you kind of talk them off the ledge and they go back into the room. So just an immediate sounding board for other staff therapists that are there. My next step was becoming a clinic director. So with the clinic director, now you're responsible for more of the statistics with the clinic. So if There's a lot of patients who are canceling. If you have a low arrival rate or high cancellation rate, whichever end of the spectrum you want to say it from, being able to analyze those statistics in a way to say, okay, this is our problem. These are the things that are contributing to patients canceling a lot, and these are the action steps that we need to put into place to better serve our patients and make sure that patients aren't canceling. Or there is a particular therapist who is just not doing well, they're kind of having poor outcomes with their patients. Since you're in the clinic with them, saying, okay, what are the reasons that you've identified that they're not doing well with their patients? Or managing time off. So site coordinator and clinic director are kind of the same thing. They submit their time off requests to you, and you manage the staffing and manage the schedule. So for me now, in this new role as a site coordinator of the company that I work for now, I don't directly deal with the finances necessarily. Like, I don't make the big decisions because I'm not the owner of the company, but I do have to firmly be aware of if we are not hitting our financial goal or if we're not hitting our patient number goals, what do we need to change so that we can start hitting those goals? So now that's kind of what I'm responsible now. So I would just rewinding to one of your questions before, kind of what's a standard trajectory. I don't know that I really had a standard trajectory in too much. So I was a staff therapist for like a year and a half, and then I became a lead physical therapist pretty quickly. And then, you know, as I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately, I never really had an aspiration to like start to go to the next level and the next level and the next level. I just did well enough that the higher ups kind of recognized me and offered me these positions. Same thing with becoming a clinic director. I did well enough that these positions were offered to me, and there's a void in the space. I needed somebody to fill that role, and these positions were offered to me. Same thing with being the site coordinator with sports and spine physical therapy, where I am now. This is the company that I was a PT aide for back in the day before I went to PT school. So the owner, myself, and the COO always kept a great relationship, even outside of the working environment. So they were starting to open this location in Columbus, and I was thinking about moving back home to Ohio during that time. So they said, hey, Leslie, are you interested in starting this location? So most of my position changes have kind of come to me, which is, I wouldn't say that that's necessarily standard. A lot of times you're having to apply and go through the interview process, and you may or may not get the job. But as far as kind of a traditional trajectory, like a site coordinator, if you're not the owner of the company, it's probably about the highest. If you're with a big hospital system, then you can be over all of the allied healthcare. So you're in charge of occupational therapy, physical therapy, and speech therapy. So that's your, very top tier within the big hospital system. And then become an owner. So if you have business savvy, if you want to own your own clinic, then you can own your own physical therapy clinic, and then you're the top at that point.
Okay. All right. Wow. You gave a lot. I think that people definitely have learned a lot, and I hope that the next young Leslie is on her way, and whether it's a guy or girl, doesn't matter, are on their way, because you really did give a thorough breakdown of what you do, the different versions of you that are out there, as an avenues of physical therapy that a person could potentially take. Now, I hope people really listen closely to the actual information about how you actually moved into your position, because I think that that's exactly the blueprint that they need to know. Do this, do this, do this, and I'm in theory potentially moving in here. I guess I should ask this before I close up. Is it a job in which it's tough to acquire, or are there a significant amount of opportunities out there for people coming out of college or out of doctorate school?
Right now, I guess I shouldn't speak on pandemic times because it's just tough out here for everybody. But generally speaking, this is the blessing and the curse about being a physical therapist and really any healthcare provider, that there's always going to be sick people and hurt people. So, for the most part, even if it's not in the exact setting that you want, there's typically an available position somewhere. So, God forbid, I lost my job right now and our clinic had to shut down. I could pretty easily find a position in a skilled nursing facility who treat patients. The patients live there. They're not in the hospital, but it's kind of a step down. They're not quite yet ready to go home. So they're in this skilled nursing facility that physical therapists are part of their rehab and their care. Acute care positions are relatively easy to come by. So physical therapists who work in the hospital, PTs that do home health. Most people are looking for somebody to do PRN. So when they need extra help, a PT who can be on call and available during these spotty dates can come in and treat those patients while another one of their employees is on vacation or work on the interim. So there's a lot of different availabilities and avenues that you can pretty much always find a job in normal times. So again, this is just a weird environment, but yeah, being a physical therapist is fantastic. There's, always those kind of stressors that I talked about. But you kind of have a lot of autonomy. I would say, actually, my current boss, which has been one of my top mentors for a long, long time, always said, find something you love to do and then find a way to get paid for it. So always lead with what you enjoy doing. Because like you said, wealth is not necessarily a dollar amount. Wealth is defined so differently for everybody. Some people like a lot of autonomy. I prefer autonomy. And my boss is the owner of the company, gives that to me. So they're always available when I have questions, but they're not breathing down my neck. They trust me enough to make decisions for the clinic and make decisions for the best interests of our staff and the best interests of our patients. And I love that. And even in my old company, they were fantastic as well. They trusted me to make decisions and give the best care for our patients. But if there was something that I was struggling with or had a specific question, they were always available. Now, it is always contingent on what company you work for, how much different employers value their employees. It's just very different in a lot of places. So just staying aware of those things. So especially in the realm of physical therapy, you should be able to find somewhere that you're satisfied. So if it's somewhere that you're not satisfied, just thinking about those things. What are the things that you want? How you want to feel in your working environment? What do you need to be healthy? If you just like treating your patients and going home, probably just stick to being a staff physical therapist. And there's nothing wrong with that. And there's a place for you there. But for anybody who is trying to decide what career path they should go into, just thinking about your value system, what's important to you, leading with that, and then finding something that fits that mold.
Okay. All right. Do you have any major things you want to leave out with? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's my final thought. And I guess I'll say in terms of just health and wellness, just advocating for the profession. You just have such a great opportunity to actually spend quality time with your patients in a way that's not rushed. You get to know and meet so many different people. It's just very interesting. While you're treating your patient, you just converse with them. You can talk about whatever you want, and you just get to know a lot of different people. And if you work in a diverse patient population like I do, which I specifically wanted to do that, you get to meet people from a lot of different backgrounds. And I had never known a Nepali person before I worked in this setting, but I love the fact that I'm getting that cultural exposure and it helps you understand what you're missing in your care and just how you need to change to just better serve that population. And the other thing for me, if you know you want to serve a certain type of population, for me, Black and brown people are at my heart. So I strategically position myself so I can serve Black and brown people. So just like positioning yourself where you want to be, think about the population that you want to serve, and let that zero in. Don't always lead with the money necessarily, although it's important. Everybody got to buy their groceries, everybody got to pay the bills. But just make sure you have good work-life balance and just feel overall satisfied with your life.
All right. I definitely appreciate your time, and I hope people got something today. I know they had to if they listened. And frankly, this is another opportunity for you.
One more thing.
Go ahead.
To interrupt. For being a physical therapist, your patients will hook you up. So they bring you food. They, especially working here, they always have to hook up for something. Just this one random story. I had to get I had to put my front license plate on my car. I was like, I don't want to go to the dealership and pay $150 for somebody to put the license plate on my car. And I was chatting with my patients, and he's like, yeah, I'll do that. And during lunch, we went out to my car and he put my license plate on for me. Just like random things that your patients will hook you up. It was wonderful.
Yeah, the extra perks and benefits of the job that people don't talk about. That's definitely good to share. So, like I said, I definitely appreciate your time. And I know that people definitely received a lot from this conversation. I definitely did. And this is a perfect example. If you watched her speak throughout this entire interview, you've seen the excitement, the energy, the pride that came with a position like this. There are many people that do not enjoy and are absolutely embarrassed about what they do, so much so they try to avoid saying it directly and out loud. You don't have to be this person. You can be the next Leslie, and you can put your own name in there and do the similar job. So, and I shouldn't even be calling her Leslie. I should be calling her, she's my sister, so that's why I'm saying that. But you can be the next doctor, such and such. So, also, you can live a life where you don't have to be stressed about money all the time while enjoying what you actually do. So, definitely appreciate you, Dr. Leslie, for your time. Of course. And we'll definitely talk soon.
All right, sounds good. I appreciate your time.
Yep. All right, so